I never thought I'd be that woman. You know, the one who finds out her husband has been living a double life. But there I was, standing in our kitchen on what should have been just another Tuesday morning, holding evidence that would shatter everything I believed about my marriage. It started 3 weeks before our son's 8th birthday. I was looking for our joint credit card to order his birthday presents online when I noticed something odd in my husband David's wallet. A receipt from a jewelry store. My heart did that thing where it skips and races at the same time because our anniversary had passed months ago, and my birthday wasn't until December. For a split second, I let myself believe he was planning some romantic surprise. How naive I was. I told myself not to look. I really did. But that receipt was like a splinter in my mind. And over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. David had been working late more often, always with perfectly reasonable explanations. His phone was suddenly password protected. Something about work security, he said. And there were these moments, these tiny little moments where he'd seem distant. Like his mind was somewhere else entirely, even when we were together. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I accessed our bank statements online. We'd always been transparent about money. We had a joint account for household expenses and individual accounts for personal spending. It was our system, built on trust. But when I logged into his personal account, using a password I technically shouldn't have known but did because he'd asked me to check something months ago, what I found made my hands shake so badly I almost dropped my laptop. Monthly transfers. Consistent, substantial monthly transfers to an account I didn't recognize. $2,000 every single month for the past 14 months. That's $28,000. Money that could have gone toward our son's college fund, toward the kitchen renovation we'd been putting off, toward our future. Instead, it was going somewhere else, to someone else. I sat there in our home office, surrounded by family photos on the walls, our son's artwork pinned to the bulletin board, and I felt like I was drowning in my own living room. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. Because I needed to know everything. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before I could decide what to do about it. The next few days were torture. I smiled and made dinner and helped with homework and kissed my husband goodnight, all while this knowledge burned inside me like acid. I started paying attention to everything, every text that made him smile, every unexplained absence, every little lie I'd previously overlooked because I trusted him. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. David said he had a late meeting, would grab dinner out, don't wait up. Standard excuse, but this time I followed him. I actually got in my car and followed my own husband like some character in a bad movie. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it over the radio as I stayed 3 cars back, watching his BMW navigate through downtown. He didn't go to his office. He went to an apartment complex on the east side, one of those newer luxury buildings with a doorman and everything. I watched him park, watched him walk in like he owned the place, confident and casual. He was there for 2 hours. 2 hours while I sat in my car, alternating between crying and feeling absolutely numb. When he came out, he was with her. And God, she was young, maybe 25, with long dark hair and wearing workout clothes like they'd just been at the gym together, though I knew better. They stood by his car talking, and then he kissed her. Not a peck, a real kiss. The kind of kiss that told me this wasn't just about money. This was a relationship. I drove home in a daze and somehow made it into bed before he got there. When he slipped in beside me an hour later, smelling like cologne I didn't recognize, and whispered that he loved me, I had to bite my tongue until it bled to keep from screaming. But I still didn't confront him. Because that night, lying there in the dark, I realized something. I needed evidence, legal, documented evidence, because $2,000 a month for over a year wasn't just an affair. That level of financial commitment meant something more. Was he planning to leave me? Was he setting her up in that apartment? Were there legal implications I needed to protect myself and my son from? The next morning, I called my best friend Rachel, who's a paralegal. I told her everything, and she immediately set me up with a divorce attorney named Margaret Chen. I wasn't sure I wanted a divorce, but Margaret said the consultation was just to understand my options and protect myself. She told me to document everything, take screenshots, gather evidence, but not to let David know I was on to him yet. So that's what I did. I became a detective in my own marriage. I found text messages he'd deleted but that were still backed up to the cloud. Messages that made me physically ill. He called her baby and my angel, He told her he was working on their future together. He promised her things, trips and dreams and a life that sounded nothing like the one we'd built together over 12 years of marriage. I found emails too. Emails to a financial advisor about setting up a separate investment account. Emails about lease agreements. He was building an entire secret life, funded by money from our marriage, and planning God knows what. But here's where it gets interesting. As I dug deeper, I discovered something David didn't know I'd found. His mistress, this 25-year-old he was bankrolling, was also playing him. She had a boyfriend. A real boyfriend she lived with in a completely different apartment. I found her social media, which was public, and there he was in dozens of photos. Beach vacations, couple selfies, anniversary posts from just 2 months ago. David wasn't setting up his mistress in that luxury apartment. He was paying for their love nest. He was literally financing another man's relationship with his girlfriend, and he had no idea. The apartment, the money, all of it was going to support both of them while they laughed all the way to the bank. I should have felt vindicated, but mostly I felt empty. My husband was a fool and a cheater, being played by someone even more manipulative than he was. It was almost poetic, except it was my life, my marriage, my family's money being stolen. Our son's birthday was coming up in 5 days. We'd planned this big party, invited 20 kids, rented a bounce house, the whole thing, and I realized David had no intention of stopping his double life, not even for his own child's birthday. He'd probably sneak away during the party to text her, to send her more money, to continue living his lie. That's when I decided I was done being the victim in this story. I called Margaret and told her I wanted to move forward with everything. She'd already drafted papers based on the evidence I'd gathered. She'd documented the financial infidelity, the affair, all of it. But I wanted to add one more thing to my plan. The morning of our son's birthday party, I woke up early. David was still asleep, probably dreaming about his perfect double life. I went downstairs and made coffee. Then I made a phone call to her, to the mistress. I'd gotten her number from David's hidden messages. She answered, confused about who was calling so early on a Saturday. I introduced myself as David's wife, and there was this long, satisfying silence. Then I told her I knew everything. The apartment, the money, all of it. And then I told her about her boyfriend, whose Instagram I'd been studying all week. I described their trip to Cancun last month in detail. I mentioned his job at the tech startup downtown. I watched her entire con implode through the phone. She tried to deny it at first, but I had screenshots, photos, everything. Then she got angry, accused me of stalking her. I almost laughed. She'd been taking money from my family for over a year and she was calling me the problem. But then, something unexpected happened. She broke down. She started crying and told me she never wanted any of this. Turns out, her boyfriend was the mastermind. He'd pushed her into targeting David, into seducing him and stringing him along for money. She said she tried to end it multiple times, but her boyfriend threatened her, said he'd release intimate photos if she didn't keep it going. She was trapped in her own way, manipulated by someone she loved, just like I had been. I didn't forgive her. I want to be clear about that. She made choices that hurt my family, but I understood that this situation was more complicated than just my husband's affair. There were layers of manipulation and abuse here that went beyond what I'd initially seen. I told her I was filing for divorce, and that she needed to get away from her boyfriend, that what he was doing was financial abuse and coercion. Then I hung up. I don't know if she took my advice. That was her journey to figure out. The party started at 2 p.m. Kids arrived with presents and excitement. The bounce house was inflated in the backyard, and David played the perfect father, smiling and taking photos and cutting cake. I watched him and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a strange, calm certainty that this chapter of my life was ending. As we sang happy birthday and our son blew out his candles, David leaned over and whispered in my ear. He said, "I'm so lucky to have this family. I love you so much." And I smiled, because I knew that in about 3 hours, after the last kid left and we'd cleaned up the wrapping paper, everything was going to change. When the party ended and our exhausted son went upstairs to play with his new toys, I asked David to sit down at the kitchen table. He looked confused but complied. I placed a folder in front of him. Inside were bank statements, screenshots of messages, photos of him and his mistress. photos of her and her real boyfriend, and divorce papers already signed by me. The color drained from his face as he opened the folder. He tried to speak several times, but nothing came out. Finally, he managed, "I can explain." That's what they always say, isn't it? I told him I didn't want explanations. I wanted him to sign the papers and move out by the end of the week. He tried everything. He cried. He begged. He promised it was over, that it meant nothing. All the greatest hits of a cheater caught red-handed. He even tried to turn it on me, saying I'd driven him to it by being too focused on our son. Can you believe that? Our child was somehow justification for his affair. But then I showed him the photos of her with her real boyfriend. I showed him evidence that she'd been using him for money while maintaining her actual relationship. I watched him realize that not only had he betrayed his family, but he'd been played for a fool while doing it. $28,000 gone. For what? For someone who saw him as nothing but a wallet. He signed the papers that night. Didn't even fight me on custody or the asset division. I think part of him knew he didn't deserve to fight. He moved out 3 days later, taking only his clothes and personal items. Our son cried, asking why Daddy was leaving, and I had to find age-appropriate words to explain that sometimes adults make mistakes and need to live separately for a while. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. David didn't contest anything. He got visitation rights, which he actually uses consistently. I'll give him that. He's trying to be a good father, even if he failed at being a good husband. The mistress and her boyfriend? I heard through mutual friends that they broke up a month after my call. She apparently finally found the courage to leave him and moved back to her home state. I hope she found some peace. As for the money, David was ordered to pay back the $28,000 he'd taken from what should have been marital assets. It's going into a college fund for our son, supervised by the court. It's not about revenge. It's about making sure our child's future isn't sacrificed for his father's mistakes. Now, here I am, 8 months after that birthday party revelation, and I'm rebuilding. I'm in therapy, working through the betrayal and the trust issues. I've redecorated the house, making it feel like mine instead of ours. I've gone back to school part-time to finish the degree I put on hold when I got pregnant, and I'm rediscovering who I am outside of being someone's wife. My son is adjusting. He sees his father every other weekend and one evening during the week. It's not the intact family I'd imagined, but it's honest. And I'm teaching him, by example, that you don't stay in situations where you're not valued, that self-respect matters, that sometimes the hardest choice is the right choice. People ask me if I'm dating yet, and honestly, I'm not ready. Maybe someday. But right now I'm focused on healing and building a stable life for my son and myself. I've learned that being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. I've learned that financial independence is crucial. I've learned that trust is earned and should never be given blindly, even to those we love most. The craziest part. David tried to friend me on social media last month, like we're old buddies who can just casually keep in touch. I didn't accept. Some bridges once burned should stay ashes. We co-parent professionally and politely, but that's where it ends. He made his choices, and now he lives with the consequences. Looking back, I'm almost grateful for that receipt I found. Grateful for the curiosity that made me investigate instead of ignore, because I could have gone years more, funding his affair, being lied to, wasting my life on someone who didn't value it. Instead, I found out, I took control, and I chose myself and my son. So if you're reading this, or listening to this, and something feels off in your relationship, trust that instinct. You're not crazy. You're not paranoid. And you deserve better than someone who whispers they love you while living a lie. Your story doesn't have to end with betrayal. Sometimes it's just the beginning of something better.